After this lesson, students will be able to write powers as repeated multiplication, and students will be able to simplify and evaluate expressions using the order of operations. Pause the screen until you've completed the Do Now. Then you can resume to see if you got the right answers. Number 1. Write b squared as repeated multiplication. B times b. Number 2. Write 3 to the 4th as repeated multiplication and solve. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 equals 81. Number 3. Write 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 in exponential form. 7 to the 5th power. Number 4. Which is greater, 2 to the 3rd or 3 squared? Since 2 to the 3rd is 2 times 2 times 2, or 8, and 3 squared is 3 times 3, or 9, 3 squared is greater. And number 5, 2 to the 6th power equals 64. Some important vocabulary to know for this section is power, exponent, and base. A power would be like 4 to the 3rd. It has two parts, an exponent and a base. The base is the bigger number on the bottom. The exponent is the small number that tells you how many times the base is used as a factor or multiplied by itself. To help remind you of this vocabulary, you'll want to write down that a factor times a factor equals a product. Let's review our order of operations, which you may also know as PEMDAS, or the saying, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Try the following question, 20 minus 4 plus 6. Pause the screen until you've determined your answer, and then you may resume. If you got 10, you fell into a trap. Addition does not always come before subtraction. In this case, we actually have to subtract first because it comes to the left. 16 plus 6 equals 22. Instead of thinking of the order of operations as 6 steps, think of it instead as 4 steps. Step 1 is always parentheses. Step 2 is always exponents. But step 3 is both multiplication and or division, and you have to do it in the order from left to right. So sometimes you're going to have to do division before multiplication. In step 4, think of it as addition and or subtraction, whichever comes first from left to right. So sometimes you have to do subtraction before addition. Let's do an example together. Simplify 25 minus 8 times 2 plus 3 squared. When showing your work, please be nice and neat and circle each step as you go along. So I read the question and I look to see if there's anything that falls under step 1, parentheses. Since there aren't any parentheses, I move on to step 2, or exponents. I circle the 3 squared. I then simplify 3 squared to be 9 and recopy everything else so I keep my work nice, neat, and organized. After exponents are multiplication and or division. Since there's only multiplication, I circle 8 times 2 to get 16, and I recopy everything else. Now I'm on step 4, addition and or subtraction from left to right. Since subtraction comes to the left of addition, I do 25 minus 16 first, which is 9. I recopy down the plus 9, and my final answer is 18. Pause the screen to try the next question on your own and resume once you're done. Simplify 3 times 6 minus 4 squared divided by 2. There are no parentheses, so I move on to exponents. 4 squared is 16, and I recopy everything else. Next is multiplication and division from left to right. 3 times 6 is 18, and I recopy everything else. Next I do division. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and recopy everything else. And 18 minus 8 equals 10, our final answer. Sometimes we'll also have to simplify expressions with grouping, which is when there are parentheses. Sometimes there may be even more than one set of parentheses. 2 examples together. Simplify 15 times the quantity of 13 minus 7 divided by the quantity of 8 minus 5. Step 1 is parentheses, so I'm going to start with the parentheses on the left. Minus 7, which gives me 6. Since there's no operation written, I know it's multiplication, so I'm going to keep the parentheses even though I'm done with what's inside of them. Now they're just a multiplication symbol. And I recopy everything else. Now I can do what's inside my rightmost parentheses, 8 minus 5, which is 3. And I recopy everything else. Now I'm doing multiplication and division from left to right. So 15 times 6 is 90, divided by 3 gives me 30, the final answer. In example 2, you'll notice that there are parentheses and brackets. Brackets are another form of parentheses. We use them when there are parentheses within other parentheses. To start this problem, we start with the innermost parentheses. And I have to follow order of operations. So since there's exponents and multiplication, I begin with the exponents, 5 squared. And I recopy everything, including all the parentheses. Next, I can do 25 times 2, which is 50. And since I'm done with what's inside those parentheses and there is a plus sign, I no longer need to write the innermost parentheses. Next, I can do 10 plus 50. And 60 divided by 6 is 10. Now pause the screen and try the next question on your own, and resume once you're ready. Please note that this is a division symbol. Step 1, I begin with the leftmost parentheses, which is 8, divided by 2 plus the quantity of 6 squared minus 3. In my rightmost parentheses, I have both exponents and subtraction, so I begin with the 6, which is 36, and I recopy everything else. Next, 36 minus 3 to get 33. I no longer need the parentheses since there's a plus sign there. By 2 is 4, plus 33 equals 37, our final answer. Next, we're going to talk about evaluating algebraic expressions. You may remember this as substitute and compute. When we substitute, it means to replace a number with a variable. You may be familiar with the word substitute in everyday language, like a substitute teacher who replaces the usual classroom teacher when they're absent, or a substitute in a game, like when a basketball player subs in for another on the court. Compute means to simplify. Another synonym would be to evaluate. We're going to do two examples together. Example 1. Evaluate 3a minus 2 cubed divided by b when a equals 7 and b equals 4. When substituting a number, I need to put it in parentheses. For example, here when I try to put in 7 for a, it would look like 37. But really, 3a means 3 times a, so I'm going to put parentheses around the 7. Minus 2 cubed divided by b, which is 4. Now I can follow order of operations. 2 cubed comes first, which is 8, and I recopy everything else. Next is multiplication and division from left to right, so 3 times 7 is 21, minus 8 divided by 4. Next I do division, so I get 21 minus 2, which equals 19, our final answer. Example 2. Evaluate 4c minus 2d divided by c when c equals 2 and d equals 5. Pause the screen and try this question on your own, and resume when you're ready. Here, we do 4 times c, so I put my 2 in parentheses, minus 2 times d, so I put the 5 in parentheses, divided by c, which is 2. I start with multiplication and division from left to right. 4 times 2 is 8, minus 2 times 5 divided by 2. Multiplication and division from left to right. 2 times 5 gives 10, divided by 2, and I've got my 8 minus on the left. 10 divided by 2 is 5, so 8 minus 5 equals 3, our final answer. Try these challenge questions on your own. Pause the screen as you work and resume when you're ready. RT squared. Well, r is 6, and the only thing being squared is t, because r and t are not in parentheses together. So following order of operations, I would do 3 squared first, which is 9, and then multiply it by 6 to get 54. For part B, r squared times t, the r, 6, is being squared and is then multiplied by t, or 3. Order of operations tells me to do 6 squared first, so 36 times 3 gives me 108. Finally, part C, r and t are in parentheses together, and since there's no symbol in between them, it means we're multiplying those two values. So 6 times 3 squared. I start with the parentheses, so I get 18 squared. 18 times 18 is 324. So the final answer is 324. Evaluating formulas. Don't let the words distract you. A neighborhood association turned a vacant lot into a park. The park is shaped like a trapezoid. Use the formula A equals H times the quantity of B sub 1 plus B sub 2 divided by 2 to find the area of the lot. So, they give us the formula. A equals H times the quantity of B1 plus B2 over 2. I'm looking for the area, so I know that I still don't know what A is. But using the picture, I can substitute the values that I do know. 130 for H, 100 for B sub 1, 200 for B sub 2, over 2. Now to follow the order of operations, I start in the parentheses. In the parentheses, we have addition and division. In this case, we actually begin with addition. When it's written as a fraction like this, it means we simplify the numerator, then we simplify the denominator, and finally we divide or reduce. So 100 plus 200 is 300 over 2. $300 divided by 2 is 150. In order to multiply this, I can do 13 times 15 and then add 2 zeros at the end. So 13 times 15 $195 with the 2 zeros, 19,500 feet squared is the final answer. One more word problem. Sally rented a car from a company whose basic rate is $23 plus mileage fees. She drove 170 miles. Use the expression R plus 0.15 m to calculate the cost of renting a car where the basic rate is R and the number of miles driven is m. So I'm using this expression, this algebraic expression, to figure out the cost of renting the car. I know that R stands for the basic rate and that the basic rate is $23, so R is 23. I also know that m stands for the number of miles driven, and since she drove 170 miles, m would be 170. Now I can substitute and compute. 23 plus 0.15 times 170. 170 times 0.15 would be $25.50 plus $23, which gives me $48.50. So the cost of renting a car is $48.50.